To bridge the gap between now and the Las Vegas live preview show, I thought it'd be a good idea to get some of your questions answered. I put out a post on the YouTube posts asking for your questions a few days ago, and in this video, I'm going to answer them right now. If you're interested in the answers to your question, definitely keep watching. Alrighty, Aphrodite, welcome back to the channel. Let's jump straight into it. I've got all of the questions here. I'm literally going to read them out. I haven't even seen them or responded to them. I want this to be as natural as possible. So the first one from sorry if I didn't say that correctly. Do you play Mario Kart 8D? I'm not sure what Mario Kart 8D is, my friend. I grew up playing Mario Kart on Super Nintendo. I was a machine. Koopa was my favorite character. And I played that a lot, extensively. I don't know what 8D is. Is that the new one? You're going to have to tell me in the comments. I do not play Mario Kart 8D. The second question from Eduardo Munia. Again, apologies if I didn't pronounce that correctly. There's a lot of replies on this one, so I probably won't go into the replies, but I will just read the question. How can Lando Norris be so quick at almost every track? I think I know where you're going with this question. How can Lando Norris be so quick at almost every track on qualies and with race pace on Sunday and yet struggle to maintain poles, overtake unless simple DRS on a straight, defend, committing tons of mistakes when attacked? What skill, if not those, and yet he's so fast? Well, I mean, we've spoken about this extensively on my channel and the Cameron CC channel as well. So it's classic case in point for my coaching programs. I've got two coaching programs that are the most popular, the intermediates and the professionals. The intermediates is focused on lap time. It's everything about lap time. Driving technical corners, setting up the car, what lines to take, how to read your telemetry, how to drive in the wet, how to use downforce, all of your inputs, combining inputs, friction circle. Lando's like, if I was coaching him, we wouldn't be touching that. I mean, he's got the lap time for days. That is there. As you rightly point out, there's more to it than just lap time. There's the starts, the attack, the defense, the racecraft, the strategy, the mindset, the concentration, bringing the points home, looking after your tires. All these professional level items, I call them professional level because they're in the professionals course. Which is where Lando falls short, in my opinion. Starts in particular, attack and defense, racecraft in particular as well. So how can he be so quick at almost every track, yet struggle to maintain? Look, I guess he's just not putting the effort into those areas. I mean, all of the effort is going into performance. I often say McLaren are an engineering team. They're not a race team. And I think that supports that idea. An engineering team proceed to push forward with a machine, like they brought a new rear wing to Brazil, for example. They continue to push forward in the areas of lap time, but they don't explore as much the areas of the professional level items that we discussed before. I also like to refer to that as racing IQ, like knowing where to position the car, knowing how to defend, being street smart, knowing when to pit and do your strategy, and just being a little bit more like savvy, in the intangibles. So I guess it's racing IQ. He doesn't really have as high racing IQ as Max. He struggles to maintain poles. Like, I don't know. I hope I answered your question. I don't know how else to explain that to you. He's strong in one area and weak in another. That's the best answer I can give you. It would be like saying in tennis, for example, how can, let's say, I'm just using a random example that is not true as an analogy. How can Nick Kyrgios have an amazing serve but have a terrible backhand? Well, because that's just what it is. He's got an amazing serve but a terrible backhand. Obviously, Nick is great. He has great backhand, forehand, everything. I'm just saying, like, how can it be weak in one area and strong in another? That is just the person. So that's where Lando needs to work, obviously, in the off season. And he talks about it being luck and this and that. It's not. It's just practice. The reason George got a killer start and Max got a killer start and Lando didn't get a killer start was due to the preparation that was done beforehand. And that's all there is to it. So I hope that answers your question. Sorry for the long response. All right, the next one. Xavier Butler 1188. Love the content. I've been seeing since following you for the past few months. I would love to know how you got into motorsport, what experiences you've had with some drivers you've worked with. Cheers. Keep pumping out the content. Thank you. I appreciate comments like that. They do make it worthwhile that you love the content, you appreciate it, and you want to keep seeing more. That's great. How I got into motorsport. So I was born in Australia. I'm of Italian background. All four of my grandparents came from Italy. And Italy, Ferrari, racing, motorsport. One of my grandparents was really into it. So he gave, at this time, they were like tapes, recording tapes. He gave a whole stack of recording tapes of all of the previous Australian Grand Prix back in Adelaide to my brother. He sat down on the lounge in the school holidays and watched all of them. I wasn't really that interested in sitting on the lounge watching TV. But when he got a simulator, that's when I became really involved. So how I got into motorsport probably started there. I went on to do karting. I worked in Formula 3. I developed my own race strategy simulation software for Formula 1. A long story short, when I worked in Formula 3, there was a lot of great engineers there, and I didn't know where I could add value. It turns out where I could add value was on the driving piece. We had a driver that wasn't using all of the track, for example, and I looked at that on board and thought, well, that's odd. He's not using all the track. I'll tell him. But for me, it was like I could never make a career out of this or add value here. I thought this is common knowledge. Like, what are you doing if not using all of the track, you know? And I just give that as an example because actually now I know there are times that you shouldn't use all of the track. So it does get a bit technical when like racing line is the most underrated and undervalued lever that you can pull. So that's how I got into motorsport. What experience have I had with some of the drivers that I work with? Well, I work with my drivers remotely on the simulator together. I'll teach them a certain concept and then implement that concept together with them, and then they can go out and execute that technique. We can move forward so much faster that way than if I was to fly around the world with different drivers. It would be very expensive as well. No one could afford to do that at the stage that I'm at in my career. And so the best way is that I give the knowledge, watch them implement it on the sim, and then all they got to do is do the same thing out in the real world. So that is, I hope that answers your question once again. Next question comes from Fred Frothen. What is your favorite era of Grand Prix cars? Good question. And if you had to pick one car, what track would you drive it for a day? Now, that's a great question. You're asking me like, what's my favorite food or chocolate or something? Obviously, it's like if you had choice of the world. Yeah, good question. I like these because I can be creative and think about what would be the ideal situation. I like the V10s personally. But that being said, I like the fact now that we have race strategy and fuel strategy and tire strategy and battery strategy, ERS deployment, PU strategy. I like that we have that. That helps me because then I've got more tools at which I can play with and help my drivers get more advantage, which we didn't have in the V10 day. It was more just, you know, the internal combustion engine, the ICE, no battery. Obviously, you had to manage the tires to the end, but that was with the grooves and everything. It was largely due to the manufacturers making it last to the end. So the V10, probably like 05. I also love one lap qualifying. I think we need that back in the sport. We've had some good qualifying sessions lately. Baku, you could see the red flags. Here in the wet, obviously, but that's street circuits and rain. On a normal dry qualifying session, you're not going to see much variation. And I think we should be aiming for that. We should be saying on a normal dry qualifying session, how can we put these drivers under more pressure than usual? How can we bring it more back to the driving instead of the car? And how can we reward those who do a good job? I think we should go back to one lap quali and give a point for that. Imagine then, like in a world championship situation, how much do you push? What if you do a lockup? How do you prepare the tires? What's the risk appetite at that point in time? Do you go for it or do you just play a safe lap? It would be fascinating to watch. I'm sure that would be a great move. So I'd like to see, not like to see, but my favorite times were V10, one lap qualifying. But with all of the fuel strategy and tire strategy that we have at the moment. If I had to pick one car and one track, honestly, the 2005 McLaren just comes to mind. I don't know why. I don't know if that's my favorite or not. I'm just trying to go through 06. 7 McLaren was good. The Brawn 09. 2012, obviously the Red Bulls were good through there. And then your Mercedes, and now where we are now. I'd probably go with the 05 McLaren, but I'm not sure if they had traction control because I'm a no traction control, no ABS. No, to get rid of all that crap, let's just bring it back to the driving. So I can't remember. They definitely had it in 04, didn't they? I'm not sure if they got rid of it for 05. So that would be my car. Track, my favorite track is Monaco. So it's actually painted on the back of my helmet. I'm not sure if you've seen that in one of the other videos. Why don't I go get it quickly and show you? Favorite track, Monaco. There you go. That is a picture of the Monaco harbour. So that's my favorite track. So I guess we're going there. So again, I hope that answers your question. Co-squash, you compare Lando and Max's driving styles to show how quick Max is. I assume you're talking about the rain, right? The video I did in the wet. My question is, how much can the car influence the driving style of the driver? And isn't comparing drive styles of two different teammates more meaningful like Oscar Lando? Yeah, good question. I understand where you're coming from. Two things. Firstly, in the wet, no. I mean, it's about driving technique at that point. The cars can help you. Like the McLaren had a lot more front end. I still feel like the McLaren was the stronger car in the wet and in the dry in Brazil. But in the wet, you've got more options. You've got more choice for line. You can be more creative. You can use more engine braking. You can play with brake balance and throttle mappings. And there's a lot more you can do. Like I say, the lines are obviously the most important. So I think that in the wet and even in the dry, you can still compare across drivers. You can see their turn-in points, and you can definitely still compare it across different teams in the dry as well. I think back in the older days, like let's say Fernando Alonso in 2005 and 6, when he had to really turn that Renault in with aggressive initial steering input. And then in 2007 was like a totally different car, and he had to drive it like more on the knife edge. I think those days are a little bit over now. Like we don't see that much variation between the cars. We do have nuances, like the Ferrari looks after its tires really well. We know that. The McLaren's got an amazing front end. The Mercedes struggles with rear grip on entry. So there are like little nuances, but I don't think it will affect the driving styles that they need to adapt so much to the car. Why? Because the teams are converging now towards the final solution at this point. So we've had these rules for a while. Everyone's getting the same side pods. Everyone's getting towards the same diffusers. Everyone's getting towards more or less the same front wing and same suspension design. So we've got convergence. Cars are very similar. It's not like you'd have to drive the cars that differently across the teams at this current stage. That's my rough, loose kind of opinion on the matter. So I don't see like if Max jumped in the McLaren, he'll just find more front grip. So he'll just keep doing the same stuff and he'll be even quicker. So how much can the car influence? Not that much these days. I think more back in the day when you change teams or something like that. But now it's pretty much, if we go to a new set of regulations in 2026, maybe you'll see more variation there. They have to adapt again. That's going to be a challenge, just not at the current state. I don't think that's a big thing at the moment. It's always a thing. It's not a big thing at the moment. Next question, Ashti Kotian 2396. Can Oscar beat Lando next year in what he needs to do? Can he? Yes, of course he can. Will he? Not sure. What does he need to do? We spoke earlier about the lap time and the intermediate level items and the professional level items, lap time and conversion. Oscar's the opposite of Lando. He doesn't have the lap time that Lando's got, the one lap pace, like know how to unlock the performance of the car and use downforce in the right way. He shows up every now and then, like sprint pole in Brazil, race win in Baku, but then he goes missing, like he's out in Q1. And then in the wet, he qualifies P8 in Brazil. So he goes missing every now and then. Like, where's that performance going? So, but I think in terms of race management and conversion, He's excellent. His starts are always pretty good. Tire management's good. He hangs in there. He doesn't make too many mistakes. Good racecraft. We saw his good attack and defense against Charles in Baku. So what he needs to do is focus on the lap time. See what Lando's doing. Try to understand how to drive the car towards that way or set up the car towards his style. It's all on the intermediate side of the fence for Oscar. So that's what he needs to do, is unlock the performance of that car and continue to bring the good conversion that he has. Can he beat him? I assume you're asking me, like, will he beat him? What do I think? No. Lando's got too much pace, and Lando's job is easier to fix for. I think it's so much easier to brush up on attack and defense and starts than it is to find lap time. Like, look at Checo Perez, look at Daniel Ricciardo, look how hard it is to find lap time when you don't have it. It's not straightforward. I think if you have lap time, the other stuff are easier to clean up. So I think Lando, I'll probably back Lando again next year, given that the cars are similar as well. We'll see in 2026 what happens. Next question, Samarth678. Thank you for your question. Can someone be a great driver physically, but be held back because of their mentality and thought process? How can you help them? Again, another good question. I think when you mean great driver physically, you mean just great driver. So can someone be a great driver, but be held back because of their mentality? So like Lando, I guess, is what you're referring to there probably. And how can you help them? Well, the first step is identification. If you constantly say things are luck, or we did our best, or there's nothing we could do, or they were just too good. I mean, all of these things don't serve you. You're going to get beaten time and time again if you continue to say these things. So how I can help them is, like, it's got to be, instead of external reflection, it's got to be internal reflection. What little things can I do to increase my chances of success? So like Lando, with their mentality, I don't think he has that champion's mentality at the moment, because there would be a lot more internal reflection going on, number one. And number two, you won't make the same mistake twice. You won't lose positions off the line. You lose it once, fine, or twice, fine. You start losing positions off the line in lap 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I mean, you've got a lot of work, like internal reflection has to be done. So it's that. How can I help them? I've thought about this a lot. I'm very strict with my drivers. Like, I come across and say exactly what needs to be done, whether you like it or not, which I think is a good thing, because it's up to them then. They know, like, I'll give them the blueprint. If I was working with Lando, I'd be saying, look, we need to make sacrifices here. Turn your phone off. If you don't speak to your family, if you don't speak to your dad, if you have to, relationships or the food you like to eat or your sleep, things have got to make sacrifices, because our attention needs to go on the starts, the attack, the defense. We've got to do more study. We've got to do more work, the strategy. How can we make things go from unlucky to being lucky by doing more hard work and putting things more in our court? So look, there would be a discipline element, there would be a mental element, there would be a commitment and sacrifice element in order to level up. It's very difficult to carry all of the goodies. It's very difficult to leave the track at 8:30 or 9 p.m. And I'm not saying Lando does this, but I'm just as a way of example. It's difficult to leave the track at 7, 8 p.m. and then still expect that you're going to get a good start in the rain. You've got to ask more questions and go deeper into the detail. Formula One's a complex technical sport. Don't blame it when it is complex and technical, therefore. Next question. Shugat. Oh my God, my pronunciation. Shugatastic. Sorry. If it's not too off topic, could you share us how you got into this field or line of work, and what field of studies does one have to go through in order to become like you? Good question. I've been enjoying your analysis very much. Thank you for your time and efforts to educate us. Thank you once again. I love those little, like, when you appreciate the work, it means a lot. No, it's not off topic. I guess I half answered it before. How I got into this field line of work was because I thought it was where I could add the most value. By background, I am an engineer. I think that being an engineer in and of itself is useless. Like, having the paperwork to say you're an engineer is useless. But the skills that an engineer possesses are extremely valuable. So you're talking about critical thinking, which is one of the biggest ones. Like, why should it be this? Why can't it be this? Or what if we did this? Like, isn't this easier? Like with the critical thinking we apply to Lando, like, can't you just do this and this and this to make things work? So you've got to be very critical of yourself and critical thinking. Optimization, prioritization, problem solving, creative thinking is a big one. Always thinking outside the box. Being analytical, being mathematical, being logical as well. All of these things I'm mentioning are inherent traits of any engineering line, whether that's mechanical engineer, civil engineer, electrical engineer, aerodynamics engineer, strategy engineer. I think they all have this. So I think I'm glad for that, but I can't add value in the engineering space. But what I can do is be a link between engineering and the driver, which is missing at the moment. Your race engineer is not a driver coach. Your strategy engineer is not a driver coach. You know, these guys don't have racing IQ. So there's a massive disconnect there. And I think driver coach and mentor is needed to bridge that and bring the racing IQ to that engineering team. And then you're set, right? Obviously, Max doesn't need that. There's not much I can teach Max. There are a few things I could probably say. I think with regards to his emotions, I think he lost points in Mexico due to emotional mismanagement. But no one's perfect. I mean, but it depends if you want to aim for perfection or not. I think Max could do with that. There's some things I've seen with regards to his lines that I think would give his front tires a little bit of an easier time as well. So I'm an engineer. I got into it because this is where I can add the most value and where I know the most about. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. Next one, Semtex11. Sorry for being too recency driven, but I want to know, which season of Max do you find most impressive? Wow. I can tell by the length of this question, just as I've opened it up, that this is a good question. 2021, where he took the fight to Lewis. First chance he had. Ultimately, he could have won before Abu Dhabi for not taking 1 point only out of Baku, Silverstone and Hungaroring for no fault of his own. 2023, he broke all the records in a dominant car. Or 2024, struggling in this current RB a bit after the beginning of the season. As of today, he's actually increased his gap to Lando after the Chinese Grand Prix. The Chinese Grand Prix. I'm not sure what you mean by Chinese Grand Prix, but anyway, which has been the last. Has increased his gap Chinese, which was the last one in the truly best car. And a bonus, if you may, how do you rank him amongst the greatest? Look, I think I get the intent of your question. I'm not sure about Chinese Grand Prix. Which of the seasons was the best? I think 21, honestly. Your first is always your hardest. Once you get one, the reassurance is there that you're on the right path. The team continue down the right path. You keep doing the same things. You double down on what works. And then you get a season like, 22 and 23 where he dominates a bit more, particularly 23. I think, but the pressure for your first, you got to remember in that final race, he didn't have the quickest car. Lewis dominated and controlled that race. He had a cramp. Max really wanted this badly. He starts crying. Like it was dramas. He went to extra levels. He got taken out in Silverstone. I'm not saying that's all Lewis's fault, but there was just, he really had to dig for that one. I think he's more, like 2024, he's done a mega job again this year. I think he's more used to that now. He knows what he needs to do. The hardest one was by far 2021 because it was your first, or his first. So yeah, it wasn't a dominant car and it was his first. You see Lando now fighting for his first. Look at all the mistakes that Lando's making along the way. And this is stuff that Max didn't really do in 2021. Like he was great. He's just great. A bonus, if you may, how do you rank him amongst the greatest? He's up there, like high up there. I mean, you're talking now in the category of Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton, Verstappen. No, in no particular order. That's the four, right? Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton, Verstappen. Where do I rank him? Now, this is like, we could be here all day if I have to try and rank these guys. I put more weighting and importance on winning championships when you don't have a dominant car. So 2023 for me, like I draw a line through that, even though he did an amazing job in terms of looking at the 7 of Michael and Lewis. And I look at the years and I look at which ones did they have to really, it could have gone either way. Like you look at this year and you could say Lando should have won this one. So this is for me, it's a tick. Like this goes in amongst the 4 titles he have. 21 goes in one category and 24 goes in another. And 22 and 23 for me sit in another category. Whereas with Lewis, I think 2008 was great and goes in one category, but 14, 15, 16 he lost. 17 was good. He fought with the Ferraris, but like most of the time, Lewis probably only has 08 in there in terms of winning one against the odds, and with not always with the best car. The Ferrari was very quick that year. So I look at it in that context. Obviously, Ayrton will never know. Schumacher won. I mean, we'll never know how many he could have got, and so on. Schumacher. So I'm just thinking now about Ayrton. Sorry, when he was leading in Imola, he was not in the best car. That sort of thing. Like he was fighting for that championship in '94. Michael ended up winning it, but that's what I'm talking about. So where am I getting at here with this? Yeah, Michael. 2000 obviously was one of those ones. 01 was not that dominant either. 03 was not very dominant. So 02 and 04 and in the 90s were not dominant. So I look at it in that you'd have to do an analytical piece there. But all four of the legends, I can't split them. Schumacher was amazing with regards to hard work. And this is the thing about all of them. They're all talented and hardworking. They're not one or the other. The Schumacher was talented and hardworking. Ayrton was, people say he was talented, but they don't realize how hard he worked as well. He was in the details. He was a machine. So sorry for the long answer. He's up there in the top four, I think. Ayrton, Max, Michael, and Lewis. Next question, Barak Yunan. Obviously, there are many factors to this. Track, car, driver, weather. Can a driver train to be good in all cars, on all tracks and all conditions? Or every driver has a niche and that's it? Look, we're not robots. We have our preferences. I like chicanes, for example. I've always been quick in chicanes. Some drivers like street circuits, like Checo's always good at Baku for some reason. I don't know why. Obviously, I mean, I'm not saying I don't know why. Like, I don't know why he can do that technique there, but not in Mexico, for example, like with the good throttle introductions and good releases out of those corners and progressive braking and all of those low grip qualities, low grip inputs that you need. I'm not sure why you can't apply that to other low grip tracks as well. Like we'll see in Vegas coming up how he performs. But it's a thing, like, do you have your niche and then there's a massive gap? And this is the difference between good and great. Or do you have your niche and you're still extremely strong in all of the other areas as well? And that's like a Max. On his good day, he's unbeatable. On his bad day, you're still going to have to work if you want to beat him. Do you know what I mean? So he's got more diverse range of skills, speaking multiple languages, if I can. That's the analogy we're going for. So track, car, driver, weather condition. Can a driver train to be good in all cars? I think that goes back to the question before about all cars. I don't think it's that much variation at the moment. There's differences in grip level, but not in the way you would drive the car. I don't think too much. Sorry if you disagree, let me know in the comments, but that's just how I feel. And on all track conditions, the wet's hard to practice for. I think you need knowledge more than anything. Have a look at my wet video against Max against Lando, and you'll see that Max just has better racing IQ in those circumstances. So they're going to have their niches, but the question will be how much further away from the norm or their normal level of performance is that? And the closer they can keep those two, the better. Next question, Woody. How does giving up lap time or reducing load in specific corners affect tyre temperatures? We know drivers in F1 especially manage the tyres. How can they do so without losing a lot of lap time? Well, you are going to lose lap time in one lap. Like let's say you're doing a 25 lap stint. You're going to have to sacrifice lap time in the first and second lap. But then you get rewarded by having more grip in the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, seventh, eighth, and so on. So you will lose lap time overall, like peak performance lap time, but you'll gain that lap time back and more by having looked after the tires and ability to deliver those laps more consistently. So how does it affect tire temps? Obviously, the more subtle you are with the inputs, if you don't lock up any brakes or tyres. If you lock up tyres, you're in trouble. So driving under the limit, generally speaking, steering as minimal as possible, being very gentle with your right foot, coming out of traction zones, short shifting. There is all these little levers which you can pull and play with. I know it's a complex question, so I'm just trying to look at it from every angle. How does giving up lap time in specific corners affect the tyre temps? Well, yeah, you just got to manage the peak temperatures. You'd rather have a more gradual peak temperature through the corner than you slide and the tyre peak goes up really high, and then it's hard to recover from that, because a hot tyre is one that wants to slide more, and a sliding tyre is one that's going to get hotter. So it's a vicious cycle. So you just got to drive under the limit, not quite like below the limit, but just press up against that limit and then drive in a very progressive way with all your inputs. And you will give up lap time on one lap pace, but not over the stint, if that makes sense, because you'll keep your tyres in and you can keep doing that technique longer. You'll have more grip at the end of the day. So I hope I answered the question. The next one from Hawk Sim. How do you reckon, and this is the final one, guys, how do you reckon all the new drivers are going to get on next year? Antonelli be ready with all his practice. Here's the thing, right? Everyone's looking at the new crop of drivers saying, wow, they jump in, they're so quick straight away, they're so well prepared, look at them, they're amazing. And I would not question that, but critical thinking again has to be applied. Are they or not? I think in F1 it is easy to come in and do a good job. It's hard to come in and find that last 0.3. It's hard to then apply that in all of the variables that a race weekend will throw at you: qualifying in the rain, sprints, starts, safety cars, fuel management, red flags, this, that. Like, it's hard to win races in amongst all that chaos. And then it's hard to find those last few tenths. Like, look at Oscar struggling to just, he's there, but he's not like Lando's level of pace. So with regards to the rookies, like, you need to give them a season to fully assess, at least half a season to assess where they're at. Like with Franco, he jumped in and did a good job, but then he showed that in Mexico, he didn't get out of Q1 when his teammate got in Q3. So something about that track combination didn't suit him. He gets kicked out in Q1. In Brazil, again, not the best quali. He crashed in quali. He crashed in the race. So he's done two good jobs, two great races in Austin and where was the one? Was it before Austin or after Austin? Someone will have to help. Was it Baku? Baku, Austin did a good job. Mexico and Brazil, I think he did a poor job. So, I mean, and then where does that leave him? If you look at the first two, you'll think he's amazing. If you look at the four, you'll be like, well, he's got work to do. So, that's how they're going to get on. They'll jump in and do solid jobs, but I don't think they're going to jump in and be like champion level quality. I think Lawson has done an excellent job so far. So I'll probably call out him in amongst the rookies. He's always come in with little notice. He's done amazing. He's quick. He's consistent. He has the right mentality. He's come in and said, I'm not here to make friends. Like, I'm here to win. So it's a big tick for me. The mentality is important because everything else will take care of itself. But the thought starts and initiates everything, and then all of the actions follow thereafter. So I do like Liam. Franco's, I think, is a little bit young still. He's a little bit green. I think he needs more support. Antonelli's quick. Again, is he going to be a Lando though? Is he going to be quick and not be able to manage all of the weekend variables? As well as a Max can, and a Behrman, I think, similar to Franco, like he can be quick, but then we'll see what happens when the questions get asked properly. We got the Brazilian now, Bortoleto. It's going to be interesting to see, but I do kind of put them all in one category of they have a lot to learn. Like, they're not Fernando, Max, Lewis level yet. So it'll be interesting to see, will Antonelli be ready with all the practice? I hope so. He stacked it into the wall in Monza, which was not a good look. Showed his inexperience really there. So yeah, I hope I answered your question there. That's all for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something from it. If I didn't quite answer your question or you had a follow-up question, please drop it in the comment section below. I look forward to interacting with you there. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up as well and subscribe to the channel if you are new here. All of these things help push the channel forward. I have opened up a new members program. So if you just click the join button, you'll get a video from me explaining the perks and benefits of becoming a member of the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.